Good morning, Rick Minner here to introduce another video we've done here. First, I'd like to say that my dad, Jim Minner, passed away yesterday, which was May the 27th at the age of 95. Had a good long life, contributed a lot to our farm, to our community, really to the whole South when he was editor of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. But one of the last things he asked us to do while he was still healthy was he wanted to do a video talking about his grandfather that we've all known as Papa Harp. And one thing I think led to that was he is the oldest grandchild and came along a good bit before the other grandchildren, so he got to know him really well. But a lot of his cousins would ask him about Papa Harp and what he was like and all, because they just didn't know. And his Papa Harp's kids, which would be my great uncles and aunts, just didn't talk about him a whole lot. But anyway, he wanted to talk about him and what he meant, and it's interesting to our family to learn about that. But for the general public, it's a story of a man that got his family through the Depression in pretty decent financial shape. He didn't lose any land, and a lot of people around here lost everything they had. And he, as far as I know, he did everything honest and no foolishness, no breaking the law or anything. But he got his family through the Depression, not just his immediate family, but I think he looked after his brothers and sisters too. He was a pretty smart businessman, and like I say, that was something that's hard to do. But my dad has memories of him, as a grandfather and plus as a businessman. So I think it's just a good documentation of somebody that was, effective in their community and in their family during a tough time for our country.
Well, I'm 95 years old, and I'm still trying to figure out one of the strangest episodes in my life. It was when we lived at the Poe Farm, and we had a garden, and so we moved there when I was almost 6 years old. So I had to be 6 years old, but not going to school. As you know, I didn't go till I was 7. But anyway, the train was taken up in I guess 19 what year?
38 or 9.
Yeah, right. But anyway, the train was still running, and everybody was still going down to meet the down train from Atlanta. And of course, Mr. Marvin's store was up there where the church is now, and he would usually be there. And Adam May would walk me down the railroad track to the train with her, and sitting around at the depot. And I would walk up to the depot, and Papa Harp would be sitting around talking to people playing checkers and so forth. And he would buy me a Coca-Cola, and I would drink it. So that happened, and it was not unusual for me to walk up to the store while we were waiting for the train, and Papa Harp would just uncork me a Coca-Cola and hand it to it, and I would drink it. And I did. I walked on back down to the depot, and I was thinking, I was really crazy about Adam May, that Adam May ought to have a Coca-Cola. And so I asked Papa Harp if he would buy a Coca-Cola that I could take to Adam May. And of course, I remember he didn't even answer it. He just reached in there and got one and popped the cap on it and handed it to me. And I walked down, took it out of May. And she was just horrified. She acted like she was scared to death. So she said, "Did you ask him?" and so forth. Anyway, I didn't, so she told me to take it back up there and she wouldn't drink it. So I did, and I don't remember what he said or what happened to the Coke, but I know that that he didn't say, "We'll take it back to Ida May." But anyway, so that happened. And then, of all things, about the next day, Ida May told Mama about it. And Mama talked to me and said that I had to pick turnip green seed to pay Papa Harp back for the nickel that I asked him to buy Ida May a Coke. And Mama gave me a little brown sack. And I remember several afternoons if you've ever picked turnip green seed, it's pretty slow go. And so finally I got the guard picked me about 3 or 4 days to do it. We gave that back to Papa Harp, and he took them. It was turnip green seed, and I'm still trying to figure out what that was all about, because Papa Harp was, it started out, he gave me my first dog. It was a collie named Ginger. And then he gave me a pig and a coat and a goat, something. He was always bringing something. It just irritated Daddy because he said he had too much he had to look after. And of course, you know the story about how the goat finally butted me over and Daddy got rid of it then. But how the sheep he bought, we'd get it sheared. I don't know who did it, but I remember they would shear them in that one of the not being used front rooms up in the Harp house that we were living in. And we would put it in a bag and put it on the train and send it to Atlanta and sell it. But so Papa Harp was always bringing me something. And what?
You were the first grandchild, right?
I was the first grandchild. And so I've never figured out, because Adamay was absolutely terrified that I had asked him for a nickel. And of course, he didn't make any fuss about it. But I assumed that people were scared of him because he was a boss. And looking back, I was thinking he did a heck of a job of being the boss, because he was not only bossing his children, but Uncle Harry and Uncle Russ and Aunt May.
His brother.
Yeah, he was running the whole thing. And right now, the Miners lost all our land. The Birches lost a lot of theirs. The Harps didn't lose any of theirs, because what happened, Papa Harp, and I never saw him hit a lick of work himself, but he was there, and he was in charge, and he bossed Uncle Harry, and I know he was never rude about it, but he'd just tell Uncle Harry when to quit bragging, because it wasn't true. I've heard him tell him that. Said, "Hoss, that's a damn lie," and you know it, because Uncle Harry had sold 10 carloads of peaches instead of 1. But now I assume that
He called him Hoss.
What?
He called him Hoss.
No, he called him Buster.
Buster.
He was Buster. But he and I never saw Papa Harp mistreat anybody. I never heard him get on to anybody, but I mean, he was everywhere, and he looked after his business. And as you know, I found out much later that Mr. Marvin Lamb, I thought Mr. Marvin owned the store, but when Mr. Marvin got in trouble with some of his suppliers, and they cut him off, and he didn't have any money to buy any more merchandise to sell, and they closed the store. That's when Papa Harp opened it up back himself, and I was down there with him. I don't know why he always carried me, but he had a pad, and he went around and itemized everything that was in there. And I asked him about a bar of candy, and he said no, we couldn't take anything out of there, because that was inventory, and I didn't know what that was. But anyway, he had to be, for some reason, for the creditors, it had to be done right. But he attended to his business, and for example, he was, about poor Granny Harp. In spite of cooking for all the family and everything, she had to cook for 6 wages hands during the week, and Papa Harp never abused him, but I remember that on the middle of the week he'd put a wash tub out, fill it with water, and let it get warm, till noon, and then when they came in for lunch, say on Wednesday, which was the best day, I'd be with him. Papa Harp would go to the store and get 3 bars of Octagon soap. He would break them in half, and he would take them out there and meet the wages' hands, come in to take the mules out, feed them for lunch, and come in to eat in the kitchen at Granny Harp's house. And Papa Harp would walk around each one of the wages' hands and, all right, boy, wash your ass. And they would wash their behinds, and they would, they were cleaned up once a week. They had to take a bath. But he was, but as you later found out, he, in addition to what we knew that he had up at Harp's Crossing, and what he had down here, which they called the Harp Estate, which belongs to the whole family. I don't know how it was, how big it was, but y'all can remember when it was finally sold. But gosh, he did a good. He was not only in charge of the who lived under the same roof with him. He was looking at uh, Uncle Harry and Uncle Russ, and he was concerned because Uncle Roy could come home from World War I, and he and George Glass had gone to out west and was supposed to have gotten very rich. Well, they weren't very rich, we found out, but they had more than we did. But Papa Harp couldn't find out what they were doing. They wouldn't tell him. So he got on the train, went out there and looked them up, and found out what they were doing, that they had a rolling store. And when they'd have an oil strike, and they were having them often that day, they would load that store up and roll it into the oil strike site and sell their goods there. And they were, what they had something like a general merchandise store here. But they made money, but they got rich according to people who didn't have much, but not like millionaires that we thought. But and then as you know that Papa Harp owned the place where Robbie is living now. Yeah, that house was built in I think in 1900. But you can check and see that on Robbie's deed, why that disputed with the Reeves, the landline. What happened was, when they formed the Inman Gin and Warehouse Company, the various people bought shares to pay for it.
Was he involved in that?
Well, yes, he was, but where the road goes in up there now, that he owned up to the railroad tracks and so forth, and because he owned it, they just didn't put it in the Gin and Warehouse Company. So that's where that line that was so disputed for so long, that's where that came from, that Papa Harp did not charge the Inman Warehouse Company from using his land. But yeah, he was but looking back, he was the most active, most successful of the people living in Inman. Dr. Weldon went broke, and of course I remember going over there with William, get Cousin Ethel, because he was living in Hampton, to haul the household goods back over here, and we couldn't find a place to put that round table on, and it wound up down at your house. We all eating on it quite a bit, and still is around, I guess. frequent travels. But I was never able to figure out what that Coca-Cola and the turnip green seed was about, but it puzzled me. But apparently, both Mama and Aunt May thought something had to be done about it, be asking my grandpa for a nickel.
That barn that was out by Granny Harp's house, it had a concrete floor. Didn't he build that to store his cotton, I guess, to sell it when the price went up, instead of selling it when they picked it?
Is the concrete floor still there?
No, it's gone. That building's gone now. But it had one. I remember when I was little, it had a concrete floor in it.
Yeah. I remember that barn, but I don't remember ever going in it. But I don't know the answer to that.
I think William McDonald once told me they stored cotton in it, had a concrete floor.
Well, I know they stored cotton because that's the reason they made it through the Depression and the boll weevil and the drought. Because I know that he would hold his cotton until he got a better price. And I know that Daddy had to sell his at the gin house. And I guess y'all don't know about how you sold your cotton. But when you came out, when you left the tin they give you some cotton wrapped up in a brown paper, and then how it would pull, and the bow would come around, and the way if it would pull, the longer it would pull without breaking, the higher your cotton would be rated. But yeah, Papa Harp held his cotton sometime. Other people did in the warehouse down there. That's still the floor of it is still there. The foundation is. That's where they would hold their cotton.
Was he active in the church there in Inman?
Well, yeah, but he was responsible for the church moving from the cemetery because he was complaining about always being in the mud down there. And of course, the road going to your house used to be real muddy. As a matter of fact, when they took the railroad up in 1938, I had a new slack suit that Orson says no bug. And Ab Birch and Johnny M and all of them, they had an old buggy. It was just a strip down with no top to it, and a colt named Blue that pulled it. And we'd ride around on Sunday afternoon, and they rode down to our house where you now live, and picked me up, and we headed back up towards Inman. And the horse started running away, and I fell off the back right past the cemetery hill, and got my new suit from Sis Roebuck. I remember that. But there's a story about Papa Harp carrying his dog to church with him to church. That was, I never knew anything about that. Papa Harp never had a dog in my lifetime. But I understand that they would say he'd start patting his foot at a certain time. It was time for the preacher to stop. But no, I don't remember him doing anything at church except staying outside till the singing was over, because all the men stood outside smoking cigarettes till the singing was over. And then they came in and stood on the left side of the church over there. And I don't remember. I guess Papa Harp sat with him. Maybe he moved over and sat with her. Well, Granny Harp was not there. She didn't go to church, so she was home cooking. But they were pretty well in charge of the church, because who else would have,
What do you remember about when he died? He's what, 59 years old, I think, wasn't
Right. Well, what I remember is I remember that I was spending the night with Ruth, and both Ruth and Ida Mae were there, and Mom and Daddy ate supper with us, and I remember Papa Hart was doing fine, but I guess it was about the time we were all getting in bed. He got real sick, and I remember Daddy went to get Dr. Weldon, who lived in the Weldon house over there, and all I remember is that at some point, Ida Mae and Ruth, particularly Ruth, took me in the back room up there, which was a cold room. I don't have any memory of William being there, John Bertha Donald, but Ida Mae and Ruth. But I remember they took me in the bed back there, and I remember that I asked Ruth, "What's the matter with Papa Harp? Is he okay?" And she said, "Yes, he's okay now. You go to sleep." Well, I said, "If he's okay, why are you crying?" And they sort of, I don't guess they held me in there, but anyway, I stayed in the bed. I don't remember going on sleep or what, but anyway, I assumed that Papa Harp must have had some heart problems before that, because I remember that we had Papa Harp like cheese, and he ate cheese toast and so forth for supper. And I remember Daddy saying that I started to tell him when he was down at the store, when he was buying that cheese for supper, not to buy that cheese because it wasn't good for him. He didn't need it, but of course what they were. His heart attack was first diagnosed as indigestion, and so anyway, I didn't go to the funeral because children didn't go, and I stayed at home with one of the black ladies. But what I do remember that I did spend the night with Granny Harp, and I don't remember anybody else being there. And I remember her saying, "Well, he was certainly good to me." And anyway, I remember him, only Granny Harp and me being there. I guess William must have been in his room or something, but anyway, that's what I remember about his passing. At some point, there's this it made me think of a lot of stuff that I've forgotten about, and about the way we lived back in those days, and the way they had lived just before, because I came along because the Minnows and the Harps both had fruit orchards in the backyard, and the Harp fruit orchard took up it was about double the size of the down to the railroad, and it had peach trees and pear trees and apple trees and so forth, and the Minnows was between their house and McLucas's. But like everything by that time, they'd getting a little run down, and it was not and eventually, it was pretty late before it went totally away.
it? Papa Harp grew peaches. Was he in on the peach growing up at Harp?
I wondered about that, because that had to be on land that belonged to all the Harps, and I remember that after every end of every peach season, that Uncle Harry and Papa Harp would go on a trip to the mountains. Papa Harp liked to fish up there. And anyway, I remember Papa Harp saying they were sitting out on the porch and talking. and Harry kept saying he would ship 10 carloads of peaches. That he shipped only one. And I remember that Papa Harp finally said, I finally told him, Harry, you know it's a damn lie, shut up. Don't. But they argued and so forth. But Papa Harp was clearly the boss of the entire Harp family, and including those who was not there. And of course, they lived up there where Mickey lived, where Nolan, somebody lives now, up to the end of John Street, and Uncle John North lived up there where Aunt May lived. You know where that was. And I remember the reason they moved from Inman was that Uncle John North told Aunt May that I don't have any heirs, but if you will take care of me for the rest of my life and let me live with you, I'll give you my house, which they did, and that's when they moved from Inman, and we moved from the Manor House up there. But I don't know who Uncle John North was, and I'm scared to ask because somebody might start looking for him and we'd be off out to the races. But what I do remember was that we had been somewhere, and I guess it was Uncle Harry's car or somebody, because it was a pretty nice car, I remember. And I was riding in the back seat with Uncle John North, who had on a black suit, as he always did. And we got out of the car, and Uncle John North shut the back door on my finger. And I remember how bad it hurt. And that's all I remember about Uncle John North, but who he was, what the deal was.
We hope y'all got as much enjoyment out of watching this video as we did out of making it. We're trying really hard to produce some videos that are worthwhile and help y'all learn about what we're doing here at Inman Farm Heritage Days. If you like it, if you don't mind, help us out, click that like button and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you on the next time.